Yo, what's good, y'all? Utah back here again here in 2019. Let's get it. Well, what's left of it, anyways. See me in a jacket. It's cooler out. It's probably cooler where you're at, unless you're in the south. But folks tell me certain parts of it's frigid, so it is what it is. You know, this video should have came out years ago. Honestly, um, I remember. I think I was in the J room and I had some conflict as usual, how it was with me in the J room years ago. And these multiple iterations with folks who said, just like the critics, everybody was hating on Snow White and Huntsman. Huntsman Winners War. They were hating on the movie, which is a phenomenal movie, by the way. Love both movies. I say there should be a third movie for a plethora of reasons, but there's not. It is what it is. But, it's funny because a lot of folks don't understand plot. They don't look for actual characters, characterization, character development, world building. They're looking for very simplified, spoon fed stories. I've noticed this time and time again, or they want things that have the appearance of complexity. Takes me back to what some of the sports analysts talked about the LA Rams and their offense being pretty much the look of complexity when it was actually very, very simple, which it is what it is. People like a show, okay? But they don't like to really think about things, think in depth, or they like things for their personal preferences. The Huntsman saga is what I call it. I've called it one of the greatest modern stories out there. Casually, I've been saying that for years, and I double down, triple down, quadruple down on that. I go all in on that bet. It is a true masterpiece of high fantasy, and we really see high fantasy develop in modern fiction. Okay, um, I could put it up there with the Chronicles of Narnia. I put it up. If you're talking about high fantasy, is right up there with the Hobbit, with Tolkien's works. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Silmarillion. Put it right up there with the Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire. It is high fantasy at its degree. And why do I bring this up? Because a lot of people hated on the movies, hated on them. First of all, I gotta give a shout out to Breath of Life by Florence and the Machine. That song I put that song on repeat. That song still goes majorly hard. Still sing it from time to time at karaoke and whatnot. Love that song. It's beautiful, especially if you know the context at which it is. Um, but you can say, well, wonder what the hell, like, bro, how is it that you're going against what the mainstream thought is? First of all, Ravenna is one of the all-time great villains in her role. The woman who acted as her was just, she was beautiful to say, but she was just that was what a villain. I mean, I could go other examples of what villains are, but that was a villain. All right, she did that damn thing. Snow White and Huntsman. Excuse me. The dynamic with Snow White, the Huntsman. It took a lot of elements from old school fantasy folklore, and I love that aspect about it. Um, in the Huntsman Winter's War, you had things like the dwarves, creatures like the dwarves, and you had the great forest. A lot of these classic fantasy elements, European fantastical elements, were phenomenally well done. We had a hell of a lot of world building in the Winter's War. The whole thing with Ravenna and her sister and their battle, the ice versus the gold, the fact that Ravenna could come back at any time, the whole thing with the mirror and the play on that and the classic story was just exquisite, truly exquisite. I mean, they hit on so many high points, so many literary points. If this was written as a tale, oh my gosh, the novel would just be gorgeous and could expand more on a lot of it, her thoughts and a lot more. Um, you know, Ravenna was evil and she accepted who she was. That's what you want in a villain. The villain ain't playing. She knew what she was about. Okay? The Huntsman, his heroic journey was beautifully done. Like it was old school Greek hero style. Literally mixed in with modernization. There was a medieval fantasy, that high fantasy element of it. You know what I'm saying? So that brought a nice twist to things. The sense of danger and peril were always there. The backstories were dark, dope, and realistic. It just was so phenomenally done. And so why the hate though? You know? it's different. People don't like difference. I'm actually somewhat surprised that the Game of Thrones had the liking that it did. And people are so into groupthink. They hear one thing and so many will follow. Just look at the hatred that the later seasons of Game of Thrones had. I disagree with them. Um I don't think they were trash. People were saying, "Oh, five, six. No, six was great. Six was the best of the first six seasons." And I will make a plethora of arguments as to why that was. People are so susceptible to groupthink. A lot of folks, again, they don't like subtle, complex storytelling. Okay, it's so easy for people to miss what's being portrayed, the message. And I deal with this, and when I debate, when I converse with folks, stranger or otherwise, or people have this certain belief that is not accurate to what's presented. You see that a hell of a lot with something like The Last Jedi. A lot of people are making claims that stuff that was either explained or stuff that was clearly showcased. Okay. Had a conversation when I'm recording this. It literally dealt the conversation I had last night with a gentleman who is a friend of a guy I know, right? Um, it dealt with the scene with Luke for a split second, considering killing Ben Solo. Okay, when you have complex characters, when Ravenna, I don't see how you could think she was a bad character. Snow White, I don't see where the dislike with any of the characters come from. They were all well portrayed, well acted. We knew their motivations, we knew their things. I like the fact that with the Huntsman Winter's War, you had both. It was a prequel and a sequel. That was you don't see that, man. I I'm not gonna say I've never seen it, but that is rare. And it was so well done. Also, that movie had it was like a three-act part. You had people out here saying they don't see the purpose in this movie. It was not necessary. What are you talking about? It expanded on the lore. It literally went in depth. And that's what I'm talking about. I deal with this, and this is kind of more of a general conversation that I come across from time to time to speak on. Series One Piece, Naruto, Toriko, the list goes on and on. Is people I constantly say post time skip is better than pre time skip, but people like the pre time skips. Naruto, they say, uh, you know, they break it up into Shippuden and Naruto as an anime breaks it up, but I just say Naruto and pre time skip, post time skip. Regardless of that, pre time skip, people love it, but guess what? It was simple storytelling. Most of the plot and everything that we got from character development, characterization, many of the best characters literally come from post time skip. Nagato Pain, you know, uh, Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara. Thing with Uchiha Obito, the lore with Kaguya, regardless if you dislike the execution or not, still a lot of what happened and affected Naruto and then what led into Boruto came from post time skip. One Piece, most of the best elements from the series is actually coming from post time skip. Important elements of the series. Now I rock heavily with pre time skip, but there's a hell of a lot more serious tone. We're getting to the nitty gritty of the story. It's a real pirates world with the Yonko and everything else, the Marines. There's a hell of a lot more complexity showcased. Oda's going all in with the politics and whatnot, right? Toriko, it became savage, bro. I mean, pre Tonska was a teaser with the Ice Hell arc, all right, and the what was it the gourmet cooking festival arc. Post time skip got ridiculous in the gourmet world. It was crazy. And so when you have these situations with people and their perspectives on wanting simple stories, look at the highest grossing movies. Look at what people fawn over. Look at even the music industry. Okay. A lot of folks, unless they're major fans of the arts, tend to want superficial. People say for the casuals, look at the video game industry, bro. Casuals. And people think I'm hating. No, there's a place for casuals. But that should not be your bread and butter. That shouldn't be the focus. You should try to push the envelope. You should try to go because what happens is when you do things like that, it's remembered decades later. even if it's not received at that time or received extraordinarily so, generations later will look at it and like, damn, that person was ahead of his time. In basketball, we see players like Pistol Pete Maravich. We see the Showtime Lakers. They were ahead of their time. Okay, and you can go into many stories throughout fiction history that were ahead of their time. The Chronicles of Narnia was far ahead of its time, even though it was written of its time. 1984 by George Orwell was a hell of a lot ahead of its time. Animal Farm by George Orwell was ahead of its time. Okay, Tolkien's works were ahead of their time. You can say they're foundational if you want to. That's all great and dandy, but they were ahead of their time. Meaning, if you would have wrote that now, I could still read The Hobbit, and bro, it's a must read. It is extraordinary. It's like, how the hell did he come up with this, bro? Like, whoa, the depth of the concepts and the lore. But without making this video go too long, and I could talk about more subjects like this, I just finally had to get this out on my channel on something that I perceive a grand injustice on. Huntsman, and I could again, it's been years since I watched those movies, but I can go in more in depth on why I rock with those movies so much if you desire. But Unexpected Wonder, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts. If there's a subject you would like me to discuss and talk to, I will hopefully be able to, appeal to that. Just letting you know, some subjects, it takes me time and research, and time is something that sometimes comes in short supply because a brother be busy out here these days. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace. Stay warm, safe out there, y'all.